Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Are you thrown off by Kevin's finger guns behind the camera and wonder if he has a permit for those?
Tom, how's it going?
This is not what the Founding Fathers intended. I can assure you.
I can assure you.
No. Tony, it is great. It is. How could it not be great, Tony? It's Youngstown State week.
It's back to Kevin now, because if anybody needed a background check, it's that guy. But back to Youngstown State. It is Youngstown State week. One of the 4 times we've ever been able to experience the Youngstown State week. 3 times at least.
2007.
2 prior.
2003, right? 7 and 8. 2008.
Some of us celebrate Youngstown week many times a year.
I vow to live every week like it's Youngstown State week, but I have to admit, sometimes I fall short.
Well, sometimes you also fall off the back of a truck if you're living every week like it's Youngstown State week. Anyway, so go ahead and throw your questions in if you want to do that. Throw some super chats if you want to do that. But we did talk with 8 Buckeyes tonight. This is after interviews going on right now. I can give you some of them. Kicker Jayden Fielding, tight end Cade Stover, wide receiver Julian Fleming, right tackle Josh Fryar, running back / fullback Chip Trayanum, linebacker Steele Chambers, cornerback Jordan Hancock, and that may have been every. Am I missing one person? You had one.
This is Davison Igbinosun erasure, and I will not.
Oh, he was over on table 1 with you. I did not know that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So that's who we talked to. A couple of corners, safety. No, not a safety, but you heard the names. Tom, biggest takeaway for you from any one thing today?
As I could have told you, it was going to be from Steele Chambers.
Yes.
So Steele Chambers is always the most entertaining interview. He was asked. The first question was, "What did you think about the, going in? You start your season, and all of a sudden, boom, you're playing a team running the option. You were not expecting to play a team running the option, and you're playing a team running the option." He said, "Quote,
can I guess? Does it have is the S word involved?"
If that S word is stupid, yes. The quote was, "Quote, it was stupid. I wasn't a fan of it." He said multiple times it pissed them off. It was essentially, I think the short version of it was basically, we spent all week prepping for this team, and then they're just kind of out there like, oh, now, it was essentially like the old Mitch Hedberg joke about McDonald's, where you're running like a non-sanctioned McDonald's, where it's like, you have hamburgers? Nope. We've got spaghetti and blankets. And that was kind of the Indiana offense last week. The spaghetti and blankets were not great, but also no hamburgers.
No hamburgers. Save that for Michigan Monday. But the running into the option, talked with Jordan Hancock about that as well. Just about how do you stay focused as a corner? And he's like, well, I mean, any play you can get beat. So basically you still have to pay attention. Plus he likes being physical. So that was okay for him, but just a situation that was stupid basically. And now they're all looking forward to playing against an offense that won't be stupid, but they don't know how smart it'll be.
Yeah, and this was another Steele Chambersism. He asked, "What do you know about this offense?" And he said, "Let me find it because this is good." If he talks about it, then they know what he knows, and then they know what he knows. And so didn't go into a lot of it. Did talk a lot. When he was asked about it a little later, talked in sort of in order about offensive line. They'd like to be physical, tight ends. They're going to want to run the ball. Quarterback's a game manager. Didn't mention the wide receivers at all. So I think, based on that, I think they're anticipating Youngstown State's going to try to do not necessarily exactly what Indiana did, but try and control the game, keep the clock moving. Youngstown State put up 50 points last weekend. They did that against Valparaiso, which is probably not a completely one-to-one comparison for Ohio State, but, it is a team that can put up some points. But I think that would probably the smart play for Youngstown State would probably be to try to shorten the game, and that sounds like that's sort of what they're expecting.
Yeah, and that could just be run on first down, run on second. Now you're throwing on third and 8, hoping to pick up a first down against the Ohio State defense. The unknowns and running into the unknowns that the defense did with the Indiana offense, very similar with what the Ohio State offensive line had to go through with Indiana's defense. We talked to Josh Fryar, and he mentioned the fact that it's hard to scout a defensive line when they're coming from different places and a bunch of transfers and you see how Andre Carter is at Western Michigan, but you don't know how he plays with the guys at Indiana. You don't know how much of the system is going to be Tom Allen's, how much of it is going to be Matt Guerrieri's. So like just a bunch of unknowns kind of caused some issues. But he said the biggest problem was the communication. They had some communication issues. That's obviously fixable. One of the things, Josh Fryar was the lone champion on the offensive line. He's like, yeah, but I wasn't perfect. Like he said he had some communication issues that he could have fixed with when Luke Montgomery was out there. If he could have just told Luke, this is where you need to, like, you get this guy, I'll get this guy. And they didn't do that. And so he's like, that's on me. That's my fault for not talking to a new guy, a young guy, and just getting him set straight. So there's just some communication things that they were disappointed in. And that is all stuff that now that you've done it wrong, you know how to do it right. And so they expect things to be better after just that little bit of a lesson.
And if you want to see some of the specifics on that, the morning show that went up with Ross Fulton, kind of recapping the Ohio State week for the offense, Ross talked about a play where Josh Fryar probably didn't block the right guy, and a play where Luke Montgomery probably didn't block the right guy. And, that was sort of Ross's conclusion as well. Like, these are fixable issues. That's, you're going to have that stuff. And the communication with it being 3 new starters, plus a guy who's in his second year being the center, plus a true freshman playing, that Buffalo package spot, or Bison package, package spot in Luke Montgomery. You're going to have those communication issues, because when Steele Chambers was talking about the defense, he talked about how good the communication has been. But that's a veteran side of the ball. That's guys who've been in the same system. They feel really comfortable with it, because it's 2 returning linebackers. All the defensive linemen played last year, with the exception of Tywon Malone. The corners are all the same as they were last year. I mean, this is a team that is returning pretty much everyone on the defensive side of the ball. So the communication is there right now. On the offensive side of the ball, where you've got a bunch of turnover, yeah, it makes sense you'd have some of those issues.
Another issue that Cade Stover talked about was first game of the year. Sometimes things are happening, and sometimes you forget a little bit about how to play football. Like certain things, like it just the first game was like that sometimes. And so I was like, did you have any of those moments? Like, yeah, you have a couple where it's like just the timing isn't there, kind of type of thing. And I think that is normal for teams the first game of the season, where there's just some timing issues, and we saw that. I think Cade Stover said he had some of that, and Josh Fryar as well. Just he said look at all of the offensive lines around the nation right now. Tell me who was outstanding among them, because it's not a big number. There's probably some, but more often than not there are still questions. And we've talked about the Michigan offensive line. Ohio State ran the ball better against Indiana than Michigan did against East Carolina, and nobody seems to be panicking about the Michigan offensive line. So they're all confident that they'll get it done. But, the second game, you remember how to play football. Things are a little bit easier. And so the muscle memory and also the football memory all kick back in.
Yeah, if you are wondering why I didn't have any pictures from the first quarter on Saturday, it's because I had the camera pointed the wrong direction. I just have like 500 pictures of my eyeball very up close. So, yeah, it's week 1 for everyone, but, you get there. Extremely breaking news from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Marvin Harrison currently working with the Monarch machine. First time we've seen that in, 15 minutes or so. Yeah. Exclusive Must Credit Buckeye Weekly Podcast.
Because last week when we were leaving out of here at like 8:30-ish, he was just coming back in to do some more work. So that's how it goes around here.
Yeah. In terms of getting better, there were, the last week there was plenty to improve on the offensive side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball, they give up 3 points, which, that's Indiana is not a great team, but you give up 3 points. And Steele Chambers said, like, they are focused on shutouts. They want shutouts. That is something they're really focused on. And, beyond just, we want the scoreboard to say 0 points at the end of the game. He said they've got a bunch of stuff that they need to get cleaned up. They had missed assignments. They've got to be more assignment sound. They had busted coverages a couple times, and Indiana didn't take advantage of that. But that's something that now they came in on Sunday and they watched all that stuff, and they talked about all that stuff, because you can bust a coverage against Indiana and, probably against Youngstown State and not have it come back to bite you necessarily. Notre Dame is coming. So
Western
Kentucky is coming. Yes. Folks in our comments are not the only ones who recognize that Notre Dame is coming in just a couple of weeks, which is good news for the folks in our comments.
Yeah. Speaking of folks in the comments, Josh Fryar did say he loves Buckeye fans. He knows he saw the Kirk Herbstreit thing where Herbstreit called Buckeye fans insane and things like that. But he said he loves Ohio State fans. Cade Stover said that, he understands there's criticism, but none of the criticism affects them. Like, they don't care what somebody is saying at home, about them, because they're here putting in 1,000 hours and 1,000 reps and all of that stuff. So I'm not saying that's licensed to continue to say stuff about them, but it's not working. So.
Still don't at the players. Yeah. But I think we've heard over the years, if you wouldn't take constructive criticism from someone, you wouldn't take suggestions from someone, don't worry about what they're saying. If you don't care enough about their opinion to care about what they're saying in terms of, hey, you should do it differently this way, don't worry about it when they're saying, hey, you suck. And I think that's a very easy thing to do. And I think we have seen over the years, there are some players who are better at it than others. There are some players who seem to find motivation in seeking it out and finding that and responding to that. And that's not necessarily what they're suggested, the suggested methodology on dealing with that type of thing. But yeah, I think there's a certain amount of who was the old line? It was a Leo DeRocher line about baseball, not football. I was trying to think that baseball is like church, many attend, but few understand. I think there's probably a recognition that not everyone is understanding the game of football at the level of the folks who are in this building. And, so you can take that and take the criticism with, appropriately.
I did also ask Cade Stover about the issues with the short yardage situations. He said the fix for that is just to come off the ball vertically, like more aggressive, just shoot off the ball vertically, no hesitation, just get upfield and push the line. And then now you've created a yard to get behind and build some momentum behind. So that's kind of one of the things, one of the rallying cries. Like, the offensive line knows they struggled in short yardage. The running backs know they did. The tight ends know that they did. So that's going to be a focus this week. But again, this is one of those weeks where it's just like, here's where you back up everything you've been saying, but it means nothing because it's Youngstown State. So basically, you just have to prove what everybody knows that you should already be doing. And if you don't, then there are issues. But yeah, I would expect the short yardage to be fine, but it only takes one guy to break down for the short yardage situation. I was on a radio show yesterday, and they were asking about the quarterbacks not being able to play in a hostile environment until Notre Dame. I said, well, if they go three and out a couple of times on Saturday, they will be playing in a hostile environment. So there is that.
There is that. Yeah, and I think the point about one guy being able to mess up a short yardage play is like, that goes back to the comment about needing to be assignment sound and just the detail stuff. And that's the kind of stuff where you come into game one and you feel like, okay, we've kind of got a good handle on this. And then you see it, and then you have stuff to teach off of. And then you get it cleaned up. That's one of the big reasons you go, the old saying about you improve the most from game one to game two, which I think we might hit the bingo card and say that, use that on every single show at some point this week. But there is truth to it. That's not just a football saying, you always go for two in the bottom half of the hour. Like that's not real. That's not a thing. So, this is a team that has some stuff to learn from, has a game this weekend where, okay, you can try and get that stuff cleaned up. And whether they get it all cleaned up or some of it cleaned up or none of it cleaned up, the final score is probably going to be broadly the same. So this is a weekend when I can guarantee you on the post-game show, there will be lots of people who tell you that no matter what the final score is, it doesn't matter because it's Youngstown State. And that's probably true in some ways. But if it doesn't, this is another week where if it doesn't look bad, that's good.
Yeah, and if it looks bad, that's bad.
That is, yes, that's
indeed.
Speaking of exclusive, most credit Buckeye Weekly Podcast.
Talked to Julian Fleming. whenever we get to talk to him, the subject of your health, his health always
Mine?
comes up. No. So have you heard about Tom? No. Just as somebody asked him, how did it feel to be healthy for a game? And he's like, it's just really exciting. Just the freedom of movement. I think with anybody, you get a cast off and, you can just move your leg or whatever, and he can move all of his shoulders and all of his arms. Just that part of it was exciting. In terms of criticism of the offense, one of the things he said, I didn't write all of it down, but I just heard Woody versus everyone. That was sort of the rallying cry in terms of what's going on inside the building. And so they're hearing some criticism, but tuning it out, because now it's, it doesn't do them any good, obviously, but also play better. I mean, that is also an option, and I think they will. Talked with Chip Trayanum, who, as we listen, this is not the players' parking lot, don't worry.
Hooning is the word you're looking for.
Traynor, we talked with him about playing fullback, and he said they started to talk about that more in the summer, and so he worked on that. Asked him how difficult was it to like go from being a running back and then also finding your blocks as a fullback. He's like, there's no learning curve, because as a running back you have to know all of the blocks anyway, so you just do the same thing as a fullback. So anything that gets him on the field, he's completely for.
And I thought what was interesting that he talked about was he was asked about vision, because I think he's, there was a probably fair perception that he does a pretty good job of seeing the holes, going to the holes, bouncing when he needs to bounce, taking the ball to the right place. And he said vision is knowing where the blocks are going to be, and then a lot of that I think is film study. And part of that is having things slow down. And I think a lot of that is film study and, knowing where everyone is going to be and where the gaps are. And I think a lot of that is film study. So, this is a veteran back, and he's not a veteran back at Ohio State.
Yeah.
He's a veteran back in college. He's a veteran at Ohio State, but he's not really a veteran back at Ohio State. He came as a linebacker and only moved back to running back in the middle of last season. But, that he is someone who sure seems like he's going to have a significant role moving forward, because there are situations, especially as the offensive line sort of gets stuff sorted out, if the hole isn't where it needs to be, he may be well equipped to find where the hole actually is.
Well, and look what they did with, they had kind of an end around the jet sweep with Travion Henderson in one of the carries against Indiana. They had where Mayan, it's a split back, and he's leading the lead blocker. Like when he is in there with anybody else, they may think he's the lead blocker, but he may also be the ball carrier, and it's going the other way. So it gives you options to go left or right, or whichever way you might like. Just because he's in there, he's more than what Mitch Rossi could do in terms of a runner. He's not the blocker that Mitch Rossi is. He seemed to be the pass catcher that Mitch Rossi is, with a nice grab on a hard throw from Kyle McCord. So I think they're going to continue to find ways to use him. And that touchdown pass from C.J. Stroud to Xavier Johnson last year against Georgia.
Yes.
Xavier Johnson was lined up as a running back on that play, and he just ran right up the seam. And so,
well, and I think you look at Chip Trayanum and you're like, wow, that guy's a big, stoutly built dude. Fullback, he's going to be a run between the tackles kind of guy. He can move. Steele Chambers said that he's pretty sure that Chip Trayanum has broken 23 miles an hour on the tracking that they do with guys. And if you're not familiar with how fast things are, that's moving. If you were in danger of speeding in a school zone when you were running, that is like you are moving. There are NHL players who, average on ice skates 20 something miles an hour. And those are the guys who skate pretty fast. So that is really moving. He said his Chip Trayanum squat numbers are also through the roof. So fast, strong, vision. I think the more we see of him over the course of this year, the more I feel like the number of carries I think he's going to get is like slowly ticking up every week.
As I was writing or thinking about it yesterday, I just kept imagining like when Nicky Sualua had like 27, 30 catches and 94, 95, whatever. Like back then they would throw to the fullbacks, and we might see a return to some of that, even though some of those catches will be as a tailback. We can fudge the numbers in terms of, hey, Chip Trayanum 47 catches as a fullback.
But when you are a guy who is playing a position that you assume is a blocking position, how often does who was the Hammer Panda at Michigan a couple of years ago? Their fullback.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was looking for you to provide the name there. Yeah, same. Anyway, whoever that was, he would have 6 carries on a year, and 5 of them would be for 1 yard each and a touchdown, because you're not expecting it, and just you're in your head going, I've got to shed this guy's block, and then all of a sudden he's got the football and he's passed you in the end zone. Ohio State has done this at times in the past. It has been a hot minute since they've used the fullback in this kind of way, but you mentioned Nicky Sualua. Matt Keller had a bunch of receptions one year. Jamar Martin. I think there was maybe the 1999 Michigan game. Like Jamar Martin had a couple big receptions in that game. It is a weapon because, you can talk about misdirection plays. It is kind of like a misdirection player almost, where you're expecting, okay, this is the guy who's going to block, and then if he's got the football or he's going out to catch a pass, like, whoa, this was not what we agreed on.
Well, and we saw how much they enjoyed using Mitch Rossi last year. This gives them even more things to do, and it'll be interesting to see how they develop that. Kevin, we got any questions in the queue? Anything anybody wants to?
Oh boy, do we?
Oh.
I thought his face was no, but
yeah, we're done. No. Chris, McCord doesn't trust his O-line yet, and he shouldn't.
Yeah, Kyle McCord doesn't trust his O-line yet, and he shouldn't. What in the world is?
Are you familiar with hooning?
No,
hooning is an Australian thing where they will sit and spin their tires and burn their tires and destroy their tires and just smoke the whole thing up. And I don't think this is actually hooning. That sounds a little more like Fast and Furious 2 Columbus Drift.
I would never put a regional tie to it, because now you are pointing a finger of guilt at least 2 players.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so
I'm sure there are other Australians on campus. Got to see which way the smoke is swirling. If it's backwards, then you'll know.
Then it's the Pope. What was the question?
Kyle McCord trusting his offensive line.
Yeah. I think we both said the same thing kind of after the game, and Ryan Day also said that in terms of being more aggressive with the offense, the play caller, the coordinator, they have to trust Kyle more. They have to trust the offensive line more. So it's not just Kyle trusting the offensive line. It's also the coaches trusting Kyle. And I would expect them to attack downfield this week, even if Youngstown State is putting some safeties back there, then you go underneath those, but you're still throwing the ball vertically and trying to just build that confidence, build that timing, getting some momentum going.
Yeah, and one of the things that you saw going back and watching the Indiana game again, it was, Indiana was dropping guys. And I mean, Ross on the Friday morning show, spoiler alert, is going to talk about how Indiana had their linebackers. It essentially looked like the play call was like, you find number 2 and sprint directly towards him. You find number 18 and sprint directly towards him. And it was just they were taking those guys away, which is why so much stuff opened up for Cade Stover. But you have an opportunity here where you can be a little bit more
daring.
Yeah, you can take the restrictor plate off just a little bit, because it was a close enough game at Indiana that they had to be a little bit cautious, and you don't want to do anything stupid and turn a game that is well in hand into a game that is no longer well in hand. So I think you're going to see more from Ohio State this week, and it's just you don't need to go face first into everything and do everything 1,000 miles an hour immediately. You're bringing these guys along. This is new offensive line, new quarterback. You're bringing things along kind of gradually and trying to be deliberate about it.
Kevin?
There's a little backstory to this question, but I will ask it to you without giving it to you. Will Indiana have a top 35 defense this year?
Well, Josh Fryar said he thinks Indiana is going to be a bowl team, and that their defense is going to be really good this year. So top 35 defense. And again, what is the metric? Total defense, I guess we'll just say. I mean, that's what people.
Need to say which metric. I mean,
yeah.
We can talk about it in generality.
Defensive time of possession, I'm going to say yes. Next question.
No, that's going to be difficult. I wonder, even in 2020 when they were good, Tom Allen is a known defensive coach and defensive coordinator and things like that. I think top 35 in whatever metric, it's going to be hard for them to do given some of the offenses they're going to be going against.
I think they're going to be, you want to talk about like yards per play. I think they're probably going to be in the neighborhood, maybe it's top 35, maybe it's top 50. I mean, you're going to give up, I think if you want to say points per game, yards per play, expected value added per play. They're probably in that. Yes, Kevin. Kevin has thoughts.
Person that was saying all along, well, they're going to sit there and hold teams to 17 and all this bullshit and everything else.
I don't know.
Somebody around there, maybe that was Wagon that was saying it, but I believe they're going to be a top 35 defense.
Kevin thinks they're going to be a top. You think they're going to be a top 35 defense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, fine.
That's fine. We're not allowed to use your potty mouth words anymore. But we'll have to. Listen. A top 35 defense they'll be in the neighborhood of a top 35 defense. I think that's reasonable in some metrics. I think my question for them is could they be in the top 35 at the end of September? Yes. Do they have enough depth where the two good guys will hold up for the whole season? And then if those guys disappear, then maybe not. Yeah, but could they be top 35 in SP plus defense by the end of September? Sure.
I think those two guys, Andre Carter and Aaron Casey, were both really good. I think those will be two of the better guys they see all year. So if they do stay healthy, then you've got a chance. But it's the depth that you talked about. We'll see how all of the new players come in and mesh. But it's Big Ten East, so it's quality.
And you got to remember, once you get out of September, it's really not AC season anymore. Do you think we can do this one without using the?
I'm off camera, so I don't care. Tom and Tony, what must McCord's minimum stat line be after YSU for you to have zero concern at QB1?
Minimum stat line for Kyle McCord against YSU. I don't. Is there a number? If he pulls a Tate Martell, and he is 10 for 10, but he also averages 30 yards per attempt, and he's 10 for 10 for 300 yards and 6 touchdowns. Does that mean that everything is great forever, hooray? Or I feel like I kind of need to see it against a higher quality of opponent.
Yeah. The only thing that we will learn from this is if somebody is bad. If somebody's good, it's like, well, you should be good, and I would expect them to. Now, I think one of the interesting things to watch is what happens to the fan base if Devin Brown has better numbers than Kyle McCord, significantly better numbers.
I don't know if that's going to be interesting to watch. I know exactly what's going to happen then. But this is one where I think you have to look at, the whole situation, understand the whole situation. And, is one of these guys going up against the twos and the other one's going up against the ones? Is one of these guys going in there and, hey, there's all the walk-on wide receivers and the other guy got to play with Marvin Harrison. There's context to all of this where I don't think there's just a black and white, hard and fast, this is the magic number, and if either one of them hits it, ta-da, you're the starting quarterback.
Don't throw a couple of interceptions. One is okay because things happen. Two is that would be bad.
Yeah, it's about limiting mistakes and keeping the offense moving and limiting mistakes.
Yeah. Kevin?
IS Buck 95. Confidence in beating Michigan this year. That's all we really care about.
Confidence level in beating Michigan this year, because that's all fans really care about.
Wait till they're trailing Notre Dame 13-10 in the second quarter, and then we'll find out if beating Michigan is all that anyone cares about. Yeah,
that's a good point, Tom. They will care at that point, and because their anger will show that. But the confidence level right now in beating Michigan, Michigan has not looked as good as everybody expected them to look. J.J. McCarthy looked really, really good. The rest of the offense didn't. So the defense still has question marks in terms of the depth on what they've got going on both the secondary and the defensive line. So, it wouldn't even matter at this point because everybody's just going to see last year and expect that to happen. And I will remind people that each of the last 2 years, it was a one-score game by the middle or last couple of minutes of the fourth quarter. So it's, Ohio State has gotten run out of the building, but the building was still, a one-score game until like 7.5 minutes left in 2021 and like 3 minutes left in last year or so. So can they hold out and win the fourth quarter? I think so, yeah.
Well, and I don't think anyone's opinion on Ohio State's likelihood of beating Michigan should have changed materially in week one, because what firm conclusions are you drawing in week one? Like, this guy's terrible. Like, well, there's a lot of time to go before the Michigan game, and
are they playing this week?
No, in fact, they are not. And you look at some of the advanced metrics. Tyler Shoemaker's number, the TSHU index, had the Ohio State-Michigan game projected with Michigan having the home field advantage to a tie, 31-31. So I think you look at that, you look at the fact that the point spread is, a couple points,
it's
maybe
2.5 now,
something like that.
Michigan.
Yeah, it's basically a coin flip there. It's basically a coin flip by the advanced metrics. I think you have to view it as a coin flip until we have a little more data. And the interesting thing is, boy, when are we going to get useful data about Michigan? It feels like you're going to be through Election Day, through Veterans Day, before you have any kind of meaningful data for Michigan.
Yeah, we'll know more about Ohio State after week 4 than we will Michigan, because at that point, Michigan will have played their 3 non-conference and Rutgers. So, but even on a neutral field right now, Ohio State would be favored by half a point over Michigan. So take that for what that is worth.
Jordan Kapler. It really feels like people think we're going into week 12 instead of week 2. Holy smokes, people, step away from the ledge already.
Yeah, they've erased they've added a 1 to the 2. It is not week 12. It is just week 2. Ohio State, think back to how they looked in week 2 of 2014 and how they looked in week 12 of 2014. And so, there's so much time. And the time is going to fly. As I said, like last week, pretty soon before we know it, it'll be like week 6, and we'll be, remember the 3 weeks ago when it was week 3 and it was walking to our cars and it's dark out now after interviews. Like, there's so much time between now and when that Michigan game is going to happen that this is going to be, both teams are pretty much going to be unrecognizable. And I think maybe Josh Fryar even said it, like, nobody's going to remember the Indiana game in a month.
Right. Yeah. And no one's going to remember the Indiana game in 2 weeks. I mean, you're just, it is a, you're going through your little board game, and you're still on, they're on like Baltic Avenue right now. Like there's a long way to go to get around the board. And that's Atlantic City, Youngstown. I mean, there's some similarities, I think. It's just a perspective thing where you've got to kind of keep in mind, this is a journey. This is a progression. This is not, what would the score of the Ohio State-Michigan game be? It doesn't matter. That's true whether Ohio State would beat them by 2 touchdowns or Michigan would beat Ohio State by 2 touchdowns. It doesn't matter right now because they're not playing right now. Yeah. And so you have a lot of improvement, a lot of growth that's going to come between now and then.
And
for both teams.
And since it cannot be proven, I would just say like 45-21 Ohio State.
You think they're giving up 21?
Well, there's special teams. There's a pick 6, so just – and Michigan. It's some charity, that sort of thing.
You're giving Youngstown State 21.
No. I said since you can't prove that I'm wrong about Ohio State and Michigan right now.
Yeah.
Because we're asking right now.
Next week it will be a totally different game.
Of course, 45-21 the other way. Kevin?
People want to know if this is like if UGA is invading the campus with all of the screeching tires.
Is that going out? Can people hear that?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good, because otherwise it would sound like we're crazy people talking about it.
Right. Do you guys hear that? Is that just us? Is that just me? Do you hear it, right?
The ghosts?
Yes. Yeah. So no, we're gonna, it's definitely not Australians. So let's just say that just to cover ourselves. Kevin?
Yeah. Xander D. Do you guys think there is still a quarterback competition, or is this Kyle's job and Day just wants to get Devin in for reps? I think it's McCord's job from what we saw on Saturday.
I think it's certainly Kyle McCord's job to lose.
Right.
I think this is going to sound suspiciously like what we've said for the last several weeks, which is that Kyle McCord it was very close for a while, and you had early to mid camp, you had a variety of opinions on who was ahead and who was behind. And then the last couple of weeks of fall camp, from all indications, Kyle McCord pulled ahead, which gave him, the right to start the first game and made him someone who the coaches trusted more in the position where, hey, if you lose a game, that would be pretty bad. So it's his job to lose. Now, if he comes out and plays just okay, and Devin Brown comes out and throws 4 touchdowns on 4 straight drives, maybe that changes. But right now, I think my assumption is, based on everything we've seen, based on everything we've heard, my expectation is that Devin Brown is probably still a little bit behind Kyle McCord, and it's Kyle McCord's job, unless he does, he comes out and throws 2-3 picks, and Devin Brown comes out and throws 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. Okay, we can revisit this next week, but that's certainly where it feels like it is to me right now.
Yeah, he has to lose the job, because I'm not sure Devin Brown is going to play enough to win the job, and play enough to be vastly superior and scoring 3 more times in a game than what you're doing with Kyle McCord. But I still think that, it's Kyle's job to lose, and so he's going to be getting the bulk of the reps, but that doesn't mean he's going to keep it if he plays poorly.
Right. And I think another interesting angle to this is, when do you need to know? Because I think you want to know. I think ideally they would feel pretty confident in their decision by the end of this week, so that then whoever is the guy can start the Western Kentucky game. That game's probably going to be competitive enough that you're not going to be yo-yoing guys back and forth just because Western Kentucky is going to put some points up. I think they would, and this is not anything they've said. It just, to me, it feels like they would be well served to know who the guy is coming out of this week, so that then, okay, you've got the guy. He's going to play against Western Kentucky. He's going to get, the first team reps for that whole week of practice. And because after Western Kentucky, then the water gets a little deeper when you're going to Notre Dame.
Kevin?
Last one, unless we get some super chats from Ferris. And I don't want to say this too loud because he's right over there. Will Marv do a Bosa if he gets mildly injured? Fair question and a real possibility.
Will Marvin Harrison do a Bosa if he gets mildly injured? To say that Nick Bosa was mildly injured in 2018 is false.
Yeah, that was a pretty significant abdominal injury that required surgery. That happened in the third week of September, and then he underwent the surgery, and then he was maybe going to be back in time for the bowl game. If he had been able to be back for the Michigan game, I think you maybe are having a different conversation. But he was done, and it was going to be a long-term thing where, best case scenario, maybe he's back for the bowl game. And if you've been following the news today, the way that played out for him has, on the long term, worked out okay for him. I certainly don't expect that. I would be pretty surprised if that happened. And and you never know if it's a real serious injury, and maybe, but a sprained ankle or something. No, I certainly don't expect.
No, and I know people look at Jackson Smith and Jigba last year and claim the same thing, and he kept trying to come back. That's why he wasn't able to. He kept getting hurt again. But no, I wouldn't expect that. So, anything else, Tom? You good?
I'm good.
I'm good. I want to thank you all for tuning in. As always, thank you for staying alert to when we're going to go live. And if you have not yet hit the like button on this one, we would appreciate that. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't. And also always just find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We would appreciate that. So thank you all, and we'll talk to you guys later.